Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Hello, we're just going to let everybody give some stragglers a minute or two to join, and we'll get right into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about business continuity readiness with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, and how can Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP can be one of the pillars in this huge edifice called business continuity readiness. Well, first, before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A section of this webinar. And when we are not talking, we're going to answer your questions. And at the end, if we miss any questions, or if there's a question we would like to share with the rest of the audience, then we will have we'll talk about it in the Q&A session at the end. First, let's start with some introduction. I'm Dani Tsidoni. I'm a product enablement specialist here at NetApp. For NetApp, I've been working for almost 15 years now on AWS in different startup companies and other businesses, building applications in the cloud. Also, I've been involved in the past in business continuity readiness certifications. So I had definitely have some experience in that field and the whole process of making sure that we are indeed business ready. And with me today, Luba Weisberg. Luba, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Danny, and hello, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. So I'm Luba Weisberg. I'm obviously working at NetApp, and I'm a product solution architect. Before NetApp, I worked with different companies, and one of the things I've done when I was working in a very large telecommunication company was responsible for all the business continuity and DR processes for the main system that were in charge of the networking itself. I had to adhere to requirements both from the government and also internal requirements. And afterwards, I worked with other companies, including a company that, just as the name suggests, continuity, we were responsible for making sure business continuity is set up correctly for different companies.
Thank you very much, Luba. And now that we've introduced ourselves, we'd like to get to know you a little better. And with that, we're going to do that with a little poll to understand your concerns and your interests. So please take a look at the poll, talking about how confident you are in your current data availability or strategy, which is a part of our business continuity efforts. So please take a minute to answer the polls, and then we'll review the results when Liat, our producer, will tell us that we're ready. Well, it seems that the results are in. I see that most people say that they're somewhat confident, or their data availability needs improvement. Some say that they're very confident. Some are not confident at all. Well, hopefully, we'll give you some ideas on how to improve your confidence in your business continuity plan, specifically around data availability strategy. That's what we're going to focus on, obviously. And with that, let's get into it. So business continuity, a huge edifice, really encapsulate the entire organization. When you're working on a business continuity plan, and almost every department in the business needs to take part, from office facilities to staff continuity. As I've said, I've been involved in a major business continuity certification effort in a previous company. That was in 2018. When you're working on all the aspects, you're not necessarily, it sometimes seems a bit imaginary. I can definitely say that in 2018, had you told me that almost all businesses in the world will shut down their offices and people will work from home only 2 years after the certification process, I would probably laughed in your face. But goes to show you how good I am when it comes to imagining the future. But the point is that business continuity, and especially the disaster recovery part, is something that it's not a question of will it happen, it's sometimes a question of when it happens. So it is quite important. As you can imagine, today we are going to focus on the data resilience part of business continuity, as FSx for ONTAP is a storage service. You probably are, if you're here, you probably know all these certifications. I myself had some very hands-on experience with ISO 22301. You really need to explore everything around it. And as I said, today we're going to focus on how FSx for ONTAP can make your life easier should you choose it as your storage, and what values can be gained from it. And with that, another quick poll, Liat. So to better tailor this session, we would be very interested to know what are the key steps. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to business continuity? Okay, so we have the results. Okay, so I see there's quite an even spread here. So I would say there's almost a draw between complexity, downtime, and DR testing. A unique consideration, a bit of a vague term, but not the majority, but certainly I would say that most people in the audience have varying challenges. And let's talk about these challenges. So when it comes to business continuity planning challenges, first of all, there's complexity, especially if you have different applications, lots of data. You need to synchronize and coordinate lots of moving parts, multiple components, whether it be the app itself, the data, which is where we're coming in. Lots of moving parts that you really need to protect and make sure that if something fails, you can fail over to a different region and continue your business. Another one is downtime. One of the problems is that business continuity also needs to address our SLA. We have a commitment to our customers with the server level agreement. We have our return time objectives and our recovery point objectives. And all these are major constraints that we need to address and make sure that we are ready when there's a disaster to be able to meet these requirements. And of course, when I mean unique considerations, it's that we have different applications, different workloads that have unique requirements, dependencies that we all need to take into account when we're planning our disaster recovery plan. And last but not least, many plans could be lovely on paper, but if we don't put them to the test before an actual disaster happens, when there is a disaster and it is obviously a stressful situation, things never go smoothly. So if we want to make sure that our business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan are indeed valid and will save us when the time comes, we must test them. And testing applications in a live environment is risky. Creating copies for a DR drill Could also be taxing, be expensive. So that's quite a challenge. And to talk us about our star for the day, about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, first of all, what is it? How does it help? Luba, please take it away.
Thank you, Danny. So what is it, Amazon FSx for ONTAP? Well, it is a managed service from AWS themselves, one of their native storage services. And the way I like to point it out, it's the best possible combination of NetApp technology that has been developed for over 30 years and have been tested by everybody in the industry, plus AWS ability to create fully managed services on scale. FSx for ONTAP has been around for a while now and has been used by numerous companies and very large corporations as well. Many have a lot of demanding requirements. Next one, please, Danny. Thank you. So when it comes to FSx for ONTAP, it has many different features that were built in to maximize and enhance your cost performance, your resilience, your accessibility to different business critical workloads. Now, as you can see here, there are many features that are relevant when it comes to FSx for ONTAP, from accessibility to data security to price performance and data mobility. But today's session, we're going to talk about resilience and data protection. We're going to talk about FSx for ONTAP features that are enabling all this when it comes to high availability, disaster recovery, backup, and much more. Next one, please. Wonderful. So just like Danny mentioned, the different challenges and the challenges that you yourself said that you are facing when it comes to business continuity and resiliency. Well, the good news is that FSx for ONTAP does have different features that help you overcome those challenges we originally spoke on. So if we talk about the problem of complexity, well, with FSx for ONTAP, things are simplified. We have different straightforward setups and strategies that can help you to define and manage and also validate on a long term the process that will make sure your business continuity is assured and give you the option to spend data on other critical tasks and not worrying all the time about managing different configurations. The next one, when it comes to downtime, obviously crucial thing is to make sure, and many companies have the RTO, right? RTO and RPO, the ability to overcome an issue with a certain predefined requirement time. With FSx for ONTAP, one of the things it definitely can help you with is to make sure your recovery time can be very fast, and the time that your systems, most crucial system that they remain offline, is minimized with the features of this solution, which Danny will talk about more. But as essentially the way FSx for ONTAP works is by replicating the data on the block level, and only the changes are being transferred during the recovery time, making it an efficient solution and just as important, a very quick way to recover in case of an issue. Next, if we spoke about how fast we can recover, let's talk about how you can reduce the amount of data that's being lost. Again, another very crucial point when it comes to data protection. So again, with FSx for ONTAP, we offer block level disaster recovery, where you can ensure the integrity and the availability of your data. You can define granular backups and recovery strategies that enable you to recover data from full volumes to block level and specific files as well. This can again help you to minimize the loss, the data loss in case of a problem or in case of other issue in your environment. And lastly, the R's. I've mentioned earlier that one of the things I used to do was had responsibility for quite major systems that actually were crucial for the company's work. They were the one that manages the whole networking. So whenever it came time to do the R testings, we needed to make sure that the tests were smooth, that they had the least amount of disturbance of processes. And I can tell you that past Luba would have loved to know that there's such a thing as FSX for ONTAP, where planning those DR processes, managing them, and completing them can be much easier than in the past.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the features themselves when we come to resilience and protection in FSX. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about FSX. So we've got our applications running on AWS. We have chosen FSX as our FSX for ONTAP as our storage service. So first of all, the most basic one is high availability, making sure that we have copies in both availability zones in our regions. It is not that rare that it is rare, but not that rare that availability zones in AWS can fail, and therefore AWS state that the best practice is to have a multi-AZ deployment for our applications. You can't talk about ONTAP, and as we've said, FSX for ONTAP is essentially a managed ONTAP service within AWS. You can't talk about ONTAP without talking about ONTAP snapshots, and we'll dive into those. Our local backups that reside within the file system. They are quick and light. We'll talk about that. We have to talk about disaster recovery. Having an availability, a multi-AZ is great. It is very important. Sometimes we want to make sure that we can fail over to an entire region completely. And with that, we have the disaster recovery capabilities that come with ONTAP, mainly SnapMirror, and we'll talk about those. And efficient backup. And the idea here is it is the AWS backup service that comes with FSX for ONTAP using those snapshots, and we'll talk about later, but instead of keeping them on the file system itself, keeps them somewhere else in your AWS account. And you can use these to recover, let's say, the file system itself. As a file system fails, you can use those backups to recover. Let's start talking about the HA pair. Essentially, it is we have our volume data. The volume is the logical point where you keep your data, your application data on FSX. It is stored on an active-passive node. And now with the Gen 2, it's going to be active-active as well. So operations are handled by the active node. You've got a passive node, which is always in sync with a recovery point objective of sub-second, meaning that if the active node fails, essentially the passive node takes over, and the return time objectives is under 60 seconds, and essentially you're up. So the idea is you've got two nodes, one node in each availability zone. One is active, one is passive. I think it's going to change in the Gen 2. And essentially, that's the multi-AZ deployment. Best practice is one for production workloads, like many other services. So does FSX for ONTAP. And we can't talk about ONTAP without talking about NetApp snapshots. So what are NetApp snapshots? We've got our data, which is stored on the logical storage unit called a volume. Volume is stored in 4K blocks, and that's how our data is stored. When a snapshot is created, essentially it is a pointer to the volume's active data to the blocks. So you have a copy of your data, which doesn't take up space initially because it only points to the data blocks. And it is ready for recovery. Now, let's say you keep working on your volume. You change your data. What happens then? The original blocks are retained if there's a snapshot that points to them. And only after you've started changing your volume, does the snapshot take up space. But it only takes the difference between, only retains the difference between the data currently on the volume and the snapshot. Now let's say we've created a new snapshot. The new snapshot also initially does not consume space. And will start consuming space as soon as the volume on the data on the live volume changes. Snapshots are directly accessible through the volume, so it gives you a very simple restoration of the volume data if you've got an accidental deletion, corruption, etc. Snapshots are read-only by default. You can't change the snapshots after creating them, so it also provides some level of protection against malware, etc. Without getting into that, we're talking about it later. We also have immutable snapshots that cannot be deleted even by the highest administrators, but that's a different story. What are the benefits of NetApp snapshots if you're talking about recovery, especially from, let's say, local disasters, if you have an issue with a volume or with a specific part of the data? They're created initially, so they're very fast. They're non-disruptive. You can create as many as you want without when incurring only negligible performance overhead, usually barely noticeable. And they're very cost efficient because they incur minimal storage overhead. And also they are a building block. They are the basis for the other tools that we are going to talk about now. The other one is the disaster recovery capability. Now, sometimes having a backup or a copy of the data is great. That's not necessarily enough if we need to recover quickly. Let's say our file system as a whole is not available, then the snapshots themselves are not available, and we need to recover. How do we do that? So we can maintain another FSX for ONTAP system on a secondary region. Now, if we have ONTAP NetApp customers in the audience, do note that NetApp SnapMirror supports on-premise ONTAP as well. So if you want to create a SnapMirror relationship between your FSX for ONTAP on your AWS and your local ONTAP on your own premises, you can do that. So if you want to have a cloud DR site, etc., migration, whatever, you can use SnapMirror for FSX for ONTAP from your own on-premise ONTAP. So when you know that, really a whole plethora of options open right there for you. So the source volume data is copied to another file system, let's say on a different region. Let's say we're working in North Virginia and we want to keep a DR site in Oregon. The snapshots are replicated with SnapMirror. And based on our user-defined schedule, we can set a schedule on when how many snapshots are created, when they are transferred, essentially according to our SLAs, whatever we need. The destination volume is a read-only when it is created. Now, let's say we have a disaster and our entire region is inaccessible and we want to fail over to our secondary region. All we need to do now is launch our applications and they can connect to our data volume, which becomes read-writable when the SnapMirror relationship is broken and the secondary becomes the primary. Now, the great idea with that is because we're working in the cloud, we can keep a low throughput FSX for ONTAP file system as a secondary region. It doesn't have to be the same side as the primary region. When we fail over, we can really quickly scale it up so it will fit our performance needs. So while we retain a DR site in the secondary region, it can become relatively low throughput to save on our cloud costs, which is a major consideration for everybody. And let's talk about backup and archive. We've covered local backups, we've covered DR. What if our file system is inaccessible? Our SLAs are not that strict. We only want to recover a file system. We don't need to set up a DR site, or we don't want to fail over to our DR site because it will be too expensive. we can use the backup and archive, the tools here. So here the snapshots are replicated with the FSX backup. It is a service by AWS, which can be operated from the AWS console. The snapshots, you can set a snapshot schedule. They are taken locally, but instead of being kept locally on the file system, they are kept in a highly durable backup repository within your AWS account. Because it is a managed service, it's not necessarily directly available to you, but it is kept on the same region, and you can use it to you can use these backups to recover volumes on the same file system or on a different file system. Upon recovery, the backups can be restored on a new volume, and once again, it is working through the AWS backup service. And with that, well, we've talked about many different features that come with FSX for ONTAP. One of them can be the AWS backup can be accessed from the AWS consoles. But how do we implement snapshots or snap mirror, etc.? Luba, please take it away.
Thank you, Danny. So the first approach is ONTAP CLI. So the same CLI you're familiar with ONTAP, whether you're using ONTAP on-prem or perhaps another solution from NetApp. You're probably familiar with ONTAP CLI. To do that, you simply need to access via an SSH to connect to your FSX for ONTAP file system. You can do it from a jump host or a different server in your environment, and go from there and access your environment, your FSX for ONTAP environment. Just run the different commands and configure the snapshot policies, the snapshot behavior, replication, and everything else that Danny just covered. The second option, if you prefer to do things perhaps in a more automated way, well, good news. We at NetApp have developed and we have available in our GitHub, which you'll see a link to in the resources slide in the end of this presentation. We actually created resources utilizing and leveraging AWS CloudFormation to manage different options within your FSX for ONTAP, some things that are currently not available in the AWS console, things like managing, like we said, the replication, the snapshots, all can be done very simply using our GitHub resources, which are available for you free of charge. And the next option is using our BlueXP Workload Factory, which is a free service from NetApp that you can gain access to today very simply. And it offers you a UI experience that can help you to define all those configurations that we just talked about. You can manage them as well directly from the console. One of the things that Workload Factory is great for is people who are perhaps new to the cloud or new to FSX ONTAP, or maybe new to both of them. With a Workload Factory, we can simply make all the definitions and manage them using a simple UI, or if you prefer, we also offer APIs for any action you'll see there. Next, Danny. So what is, in a few words, BlueXP Workload Factory? It's a tool that we've created here at NetApp, and I've said this is a free to use tool. It's a SaaS-based solution, which means no deployment are needed. All you need to do is simply sign in, provide a few permissions, and from that point on, you can see all the relevant information on your Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP environment. You can manage that directly from there. We even have options if you prefer. If you still want to do some CLI commands, we offer you built-in options to run the commands, so you don't have to define as jump host or something like that. It gives you a full ability to manage your entire FSX for ONTAP environment. One of the things that we often see people have questions about or unsure is whenever, especially when they move to the cloud and they're new to that, is they have some questions and some difficulties with both the planning, right? Now that you move from your on-prem to the cloud, how do you access your environments? How do you calculate the size and the resources that would be needed when you move to the cloud? After that, how you do the deployment and the configuration of the environment. And after you do all the planning and the provisioning, what is the best way to operate, to monitor, and to optimize in a continuous basis your environment? All those things can lead to issues, can lead to questions, and can lead to, if done incorrectly, to downtime as well and data loss. With Workload Factory and we can help you solve all those issues, because this is what BlueXP Workload Factory was designed to do. It helps you with all of those three aspects of the planning. We have a built-in TCO calculator that allows you to input either information from your existing systems or allow the system to automatically discover existing environment and suggest the best practice deployment for your environment using FSx for ONTAP as the base storage. On top of that, we help you to very simply to deploy the environment, whether you prefer to do it in an automated way. We can supply you with the code snippets to do that, or if you want, you can use the UI to do that. And lastly, we offer a wide range that keeps growing with every version that we release of ways to manage your environment on the long term. Make sure you see all the data in one place. By the way, one of the things we've added into Workload Factory that many of our customers has requested is the ability to see data from multiple AWS accounts in region in one space, helping you to have a single view of the entire environment. Next, Danny, please. So what else do we have within BlueXP Workload Factory? Well, there are the calculators, the deployment wizards. We have dashboards, so you'll be able to see your entire environment in one place and identify potential issues, whether it comes to cost or performance. We have migration advisors that help you to move data either on-prem or in the cloud to FSx for ONTAP. We have different scripts that help you, that you can take and implement within your automated processes. And we also have recommendations to identify and fix different drifts throughout the life cycle of the environment. Workload Factory, as I said, it's a free to use tool that you can start using today. You'll see the link to that in the resources page in the end of this presentation. You can start, oh, thanks Nat, and we have it actually in your chat, so you can go ahead and log in today. By the way, if you already are using BlueXP today, Workload Factory can be used as one of the services within it or as a standalone service. However you want to use it, it will work either way. We found out throughout the time that we released it and for our customers that it helped them to deploy and configure the systems the right way from the first attempt without having to reconfigure the environment afterwards. It can help to reduce the different errors by doing manual steps by up to 90%, and also can help you lower the cost of your deployments, again, by helping you to define everything right from the beginning and making sure everything remains configured correctly throughout the life of your environment. And it also reduces the time that you and the rest of your colleagues need to spend on planning and defining and reading different documentations. So you can do everything with hours instead of days and weeks. And next one.
Yeah, and now time for a quick poll. Go ahead. All right, so before we go to our demo, a question that is somewhat related to the demo. What is your recovery time objectives for your critical workloads? Wait for Liat to signal me that you've finished answering the poll, and then we can continue to our demo. Okay, we've got the results. And I see, as expected, the great majority of you have an under 1 hour return time objective, meaning the listeners here work with mission critical, highly available applications that have a very strict RTO. And with that, Lua, if you can walk us through the demo that you're planning to show us.
Absolutely. So let's take an example, right? Like I said, this is something or it's quite similar to things that I've used to do, in a previous life, and I'm sure this is something you all been doing quite a lot today. So let's take an example and let's meet Alex. Alex is an IT administrator in one of the well-known corporations, XYZ. I'm sure you're all familiar with them. And one of the things that Alex has been tasked to do is to configure and maintain the storage environment to meet the business continuity requirement in the organization. And some of the things that he needs to do is make sure that the configuration are such that it will meet both the RTO, the recovery time objective, the RPO, the recovery point objective, right? So both make sure that the systems would be able to recover in a sufficient time, but also without loss of data that is more than is allowed. He also needs to make sure that there are backups in a remote site. And on top of that, there's another requirement where the financial data must be kept for 7 years and cannot be deleted. So to do all those tasks, Alex has a few options. He can either use the CLI, like I've mentioned earlier, right? He can access the different environments, configure everything, and have it run, which is a legitimate option. The other option he can, if he wants, he can automate processes and use our cloud formation template to define all the things by that. Or, and this is what I'm showing you, I want to show you now, he can use the BlueXP workload factory to define everything in a UI in a matter of minutes. And I've actually created a demo that will show you just that. So
Great, I'll let you share your
yes,
screen.
thank you. Absolutely. Just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see a screen.
Brilliant. So what you're seeing here is a view from the NetApp's workload factory tool. By the way, Liat have posted the link for this tool in the chat, so you can go ahead and try it today. And let me show you what, let's say what Alex has in his environment and what he can do. What he has two different FSX for ONTAP environment. One is the prod, you can see it here, and one is the DR. Now, interesting to note that each one of those systems exists in a different AWS region to meet the requirements of the organization where data must be kept for as a backup in a different region. And by the way, something to see, you can see that both systems, and Alex can see both systems in one UI. This is something that we've a feature of Workload Factory, where you can see information, define which regions you want to look at, and even which AWS accounts. So you can see the entire organization, your entire environment in just one place. So let's start the demo and see what's happened. So the first thing we'll do is we'll access the prod environment, and we'll go ahead and define a new snapshot policy to make sure we have copies of the data on a local environment, on the prod environment. And you can see no CLI is necessary. What you and Alex, of course, can do as well is go ahead and define everything here. Define how many copies he wants, from hourly copies to daily copies, weekly and monthly as well. On top of that, this UI allows to define not just stop it for a moment, not just how many copies of the data you want, but you also can define whether or not some of the copies should have immutability. And like Danny mentioned earlier, immutability is the ability to lock a snapshot and the data within it for a certain period of time, making it unchangeable. This is a great tool for organizations, they need to make sure data is unchanged. I know that this is something that's commonly done in different financial organizations when they need to make sure that once, for example, people use whatever credit card or something like that, the data is there, is set, and nobody can go ahead and change it on a later date. And as you can see, very easily done and managed within Workload Factory. So you will see the definitions. You can choose the retention period and define exactly with days, months, years, depending on the requirements of the environment. Of course, this is something, and you'll see in my example, there are multiple policies in place, which means this is something that can be beneficial and managed by different application owners and meet the requirements per application. The next things we're going to do is we're going to take this snapshot policy that we just defined, and we're going to go to this volume named financial data, and we're going to assign this new policy to this volume. And from this point on, we're going to the system will automatically take automated snapshots every hour. And you can see we also know how many snapshots we're going to keep for backup as well. And as you see right now, Workload Factory can show here that we have the snapshot defined and protected. And this is another thing where Workload Factory can definitely help you, because obviously if you have a volume that does not have snapshot defined and needs to be, this is a good place to identify that there's some configuration missing. And by the way, something that will not have time to cover in today's session, but just so you know, we also have a well-architected status dashboard within Workload Factory that allows you to automatically, it will identify whether you have a volume that does not have snapshot policy assigned to, so you can automatically fix this issue. Once we do that, right, once we do have our local snapshot in place, the next step, we want to move the data to the remote destination. If you remember, that was one of the requirements, keep a backup in a different location. And after we chose the source of the data, the next point will be choosing where we want to copy the data to. So we're going to go to a different region, Oregon in this case, and choose the system where we want to move the data to. This is the new volume that will be created. The next part will be choose the specific use case. Now, within this solution, we currently have 4 different use cases that you can use and you can choose. Whenever you define or choose a specific one, whether it's migration, a hot disaster, or cold disaster recovery, the system will automatically define different parameters that would be best suited to meet this use case. But of course, you can always adapt it and change it to your needs. And I also want you to take a notice on the right side of the screen where we have a code box. So if you want to automate those processes, you can simply copy this API request that we already created for you and use it for you or in your automated processes. Or alternatively, of course, define it everything within this UI of Workload Factory. So in this case, let's choose the cold disaster recovery because we don't need a very quick recovery process. We'll also go with 1 hour replication interval, but you can see that you can go as low as 5 minutes. And the next and the last thing we need to do is to define how much data we're going to be saved on the destination. So not on the source, but the destination itself. And that is it. Workload Factory will run all the configurations on both the source and the destination environment. And you will see that we will go here for the DR site and we'll go to the volumes. You'll be able to see that we have a new volume with the name that was just predefined. It's the data protection volume, which means we cannot write to that right now. And if you'll go to the replication relationship, you can see this relationship configured here. And it's not just that you can see that, you can also manage that, which we'll see in a few moments. So you can do things like initialize, obviously. a replication and let it run. And from that point on, you're going to have an hourly copy of the movement of data from the source to the destination. A few other things that we can see here that you will be able to see is, of course, the status. Is the replication healthy? Is there an issue? If there would be an issue, the information will be available here. We also have data on the lag time. How long did it take to copy the data? This is a very useful information because, let's say, for example, you have a RPO of less than an hour, of 5 minutes, for example, and you can see that it takes you 6 minutes to copy the data. This means that you will not meet your SLA. But it also means that you know in advance that there is an issue and you can go ahead and change the configuration of your environment to overcome this problem and make sure you're keeping and meeting your requirements. So after we did that, let's say we want to right now either test DR, so move the data from, move to work from our DR side, or in the worst case, right, there is an issue and we now, perhaps there's a corruption on the source system and we want to start working on the DR system. How do we do it? Very simply. The first thing we'll need to do, we need to break the connection, right? Stop the replication between the original source and the destination. You can see you don't need to go to the CLI to do it. Very simply run the command. And the replication now is broken. You can see in the state. It is now broken off. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to reverse the replication, right? Because let's say we're now want to copy data from our backup to the original to make sure we can get back and work with our original environment. So you'll be able to see that the source has been changed and now the source is the copy and we move into destination and just you can see here that what used to be the DP, the data protection, is now a read-write. So the volume had been automatically, configuration of this volume has been changed and now people can use this volume and access that while we're working on getting the original system back online. And just to show, if we'll go back to the original system, right, to our production system, and go to the volumes, you'll be able to see that our financial data original volume is currently being used as the backup and where we move the data to. Again, here is the replication. You can see all the data here and all the actions that were available for us on the destination or the source available in both options. And that is it. Danny, back to you.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
stop sharing. And
All
go
right, and I'll
ahead
get back to that deck. Thank you very much for the demo, Luba. Very eye-opening and insightful. Now, it's, first of all, we are going to share a recording and this deck. And part of the deck is the resource section, when you can see what resources we used for the presentation, some helpful links. Also in the QR code is the registration for Workload Factory, should you want to give it a try. You can try it without putting any credentials, just to take a look at the DCO calculators. You can also put read-only credentials if you want to gain a bit more insights about your data estate and maybe whether FSx for ONTAP migration is helpful for you. Okay, what happened? Okay, so with the Q&A questions, I think we've answered most of the questions during the presentation. Luba, do you have any question you think? One question that I see that has been repeating is the differences between FSx for ONTAP and CVO. So essentially, you can think of FSx for ONTAP as CVO as a managed service. Essentially, it is a fully fledged ONTAP, but it is managed by AWS, meaning AWS manages it. Support comes from AWS. You do get get ONTAP access to the majority of ONTAP features, not full administrator, but close to it. And CVO is not a managed service and means that you need to you have some responsibility for the infrastructures, etc. So I think for the great majority of customers, FSx for ONTAP makes more sense than CVO and AWS. Once again, the particulars are up to you. Luba, do you have any other questions that you answered that you maybe want to discuss?
I think you covered the most recurring question that we hear both from this webinar, but also, in other times when we speak about this specific solution. I will also say that when it comes to FSx for ONTAP, one of the great things about it is because it is a native AWS service. It has native, it has support and connectivity to the different AWS services as well, from SNS, CloudWatch, and pretty much any other things you think about. If you're interested in different AI workloads, well, then you can definitely take advantage of AWS Q or Bedrock and all those things where FSx can be a great solution as the storage for those workloads as well.
And before we say goodbye, I want to let you know that if you wish to take a look at Workload Factory and you don't want to do it alone, you want some guidance or some assistance from an ONTAP expert, you can fill out the feedback form at the end of the session, and somebody will approach you for a free demo or sort of pre-onboarding session. So please feel free to do that. And with that, I'd like to thank Luba for co-hosting with me and for giving us such a very good demo that really shows the vast features that come with Workload Factory and how simple it makes everything, the simplicity that comes with Workload Factory. I'd like to thank Liat for keeping this session running smoothly and for sending us the links, the polls, etc. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you for attending, for asking very good questions, making this an engaging webinar and an interactive one. Thank you all, and I really hope to see you in our future webinars, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye bye.